We're now joined by two experts with significant experience in the region. Emil Hokaim is a Mideast-based analyst for the International Institute for Strategic Studies, where his work focuses on Syria, Iran, and the Gulf states. And Andrew Tabler, who lived in Syria for most of the last decade and covered Assad for an English-language magazine he founded there. He's now a fellow at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy. And Andrew Tabler, let me start with you. The observer mission from the Arab League has been in Syria for a month. Have they accomplished anything?
They've observed a lot of atrocities by the regime, a lot of fighting, a lot of unrest throughout the country. But there are only about 160 of them thus far, and so the mission itself has been very controversial. They have observed the implementation of the Arab League protocol to try and stop the crisis in Syria, but they haven't been able to stop the killing, and this is where they've come under a lot of criticism by the opposition and the public at large.
Emil Hokaim, do you think that the Arab League proposal to ease Assad out of power is informed by what those observers have been seeing on the ground in the country?
It's mostly informed by the frustration of the Arab League because the Syrian government hasn't been really responsive. The Arab League has lost a lot of its luster in the past few weeks. It came under criticism from Syrian activists inside the country, from Syrian opposition leaders, from the international community and the media. So the Arab League needs to recover from that blow, and this is why it put forward a much tougher proposal that most people, including ourselves, expected. This is a pretty comprehensive proposal for a transition of power, something that the Syrian government has already turned down. But I would suspect that most people within the Syrian regime just don't see that as a viable plan for the moment.
Much tougher than you expected. Has the Arab League in the past been a friend to leaders like Assad?
Well, the Arab League has been mostly silent in the past. I mean, it's been a very ineffective and silent organization that hasn't delivered much in terms of political progress in the region and so on. But on Libya and more recently on Syria, it has taken some stance that were unprecedented. It endorsed the NATO or the UN sanctioned NATO intervention in Libya, and has been putting some serious pressure on Bashar al-Assad, adopting sanctions, suspending Syria's membership in the Arab League, and now turning to Security Council to obtain Bashar al-Assad's departure.
Well, the Damascus government, Andrew Tabler, turned them down flat. What's their next move?
They're going to try and implement something, a series of changes that deal with the constitution in Syria, a referendum on the constitution. For the Assad regime, the problem isn't the regime itself. It's an international conspiracy, a scheme, and it's mostly procedural. And that with these changes, they'll be able to hold on. Of course, what of course is at the end of the Arab League's announcement today, the report, is the fact that the Arab League is going to the Security Council with this, and so all eyes will be on Russia yet again, who until now has vetoed every substantive resolution dealing with Syria.
Could that implicate the United States as well?
It complicates American diplomacy and efforts substantially because the United States, along with the European countries, now along with Turkey and a lot of others, are now pushing the Security Council to do something, but time and time again they've come up with very, very little, or in the end some kind of extremely watered-down resolution that has no teeth and has no bearing on the situation. So diplomatically, there's going to be a lot going on in the coming days, but in the end, there isn't anything in sight that's going to stop the killing in Syria and the street from erupting, and this is the problem that everyone has in front of them.
Let's talk a little bit more about the observer mission. The leader of it says it's had a good effect, that the killing has gone down, while the Syrian opposition says it's gone on unabated the whole time they've been in the country. Many members have quit and left the country in disgust. Will the Assad government allow them to stay, and what's been the effect so far?
Well, this is a very tricky situation for the monitors because they're obviously under criticism by Syrian activists and the Syrian people in general. But for the regime, they are a way to buy time, to placate some of the demands and allow some of the members of the Arab League who are not very comfortable with increased pressure to say that something is being done. In reality, the head of the observer mission himself is a very controversial character. His most recent statements were to the effect that actually he was able to do his job and things He was discussing the differences between armored vehicle and tanks, very technical details, when actually the rate of killings hasn't changed in Syria significantly since they were deployed. So I don't think that this is a way out. And many members of the Arab League, including Saudi Arabia and Qatar, who have been driving force behind the diplomacy, have come to the conclusion that it's no longer worth it. And Saudi Arabia has announced yesterday that it would withdraw its monitors from the Arab League, which could very well encourage other Gulf states and other countries to withdraw their own monitors, which would lead to a collapse of the mission from within.
Significant move for the Saudis, Andrew Tabler, to signal their displeasure and sort of bail out on the Assad regime?
It is, because, and this is really important, that the Arab League wanted to add observers into Syria and had been talking about it, raising it to 300. A lot of those observers were supposed to come from Saudi Arabia. So with Saudi Arabia pulling their observers, then the question is, well, where are the other observers going to come from? So the Arab League is having to scramble. The Saudis are taking a tougher position. But it really shows that you have a lot of divisions inside of the Arab League on how to deal with this. It'd be interesting to see how the Assad regime tries to divide the Arab League here in the coming days and weeks ahead, in the face of a plan from the Arab League that it has no intention of implementing.
In the short time we have left, you've both signaled that the list of friends of the Assad government is shrinking. Is he still powerful? Is he still dangerous? What's, in the short term, what's ahead?
I still think the balance of power inside the country is in his favor, but it's quickly eroding. His credibility, his legitimacy, even his attempts to reach out to, I would say, the mellow opposition, domestic opposition that have all failed, and he's not on strong ground. The economy is suffering majorly because of the isolation. The sanctions that were passed are having an impact. At the same time, the disarray or the divisions within the opposition are actually postponing the day of his demise.
Andrew?
I think that he is in an increasingly weakened position. You can see, as Emil said, his support eroding. For example, in Zabadani, outside of Damascus, and then in the as you mentioned in your report, the environ of Duma, you have large parts of those areas which are outside of government control. Government tries to reassert, but the problem is you have hundreds of thousands of people coming back out. Assad can't put this genie back in the bottle. He's been trying over and over again for over 10 months, and he simply can't do it. The security solution isn't working. He isn't able to reform his way out of it. He's in a real dictator's dilemma, and I don't think he knows how to get out of it.
Andrew Tabler, Emil Hocaim, thank you both.
Thank you.